Guys, I think it's time we revisit the Z1 Motorsports 400 horsepower package for the Q37. That's, of course, for the G37, the 370Z, and the Q50, 2014, 2015 Infiniti Q50. My wife and daughter are doing a little bit of shopping. I'm stuck here in the car, and I've been thinking a lot about this package lately for a couple of reasons. So I actually made a video about this several years ago, but I had to bring it down. I had to pull it down a little while ago because some things have changed for the platform, but also video was several years old and it was one of the first videos that I made, so it was a little bit slow and boring. So it was time to revamp it, time to reevaluate what's going on with this package and what's going on with this Q37 platform, and I have some new opinions and new points about this particular package from Z1 Motorsports. Another reason for this updated video is that Z1 Motorsports has changed the contents of this 400 horsepower package over the last few years. First things first, like anything, you have to have reasonable expectations. It's a 400 horsepower package, but it refers to 400 crank horsepower. That 400 wheel horsepower number is still very, very elusive for this 3.7 platform. So what does 400 crank horsepower mean? How does it translate, or how does it equate to wheel horsepower? Well, generally you have to consider about 15 to 20% of horsepower loss through the drivetrain. So it makes 400 horsepower at the crank, at the flywheel. The engine itself can make 400 horsepower, but all the parasitic drag from accessories and the connection of your drivetrain, your transmission, rear diff, etc., it pulls horsepower away essentially. So it brings you down to about 340, 345 horsepower to the wheels. So if you think about 400 crank horsepower, you're making about 340, 345 if you actually put it on the dyno. So is this 400 horsepower package from Z1 Motorsports actually going to get you there? So the previous package had a little bit more versatility to me, had a little bit more crossover between platforms, because it included a ported intake manifold, included test pipes, and it included shorty headers, and all of those really could be used for the Q50, G37, 370Z. Although the target audience really was the G37 and 370Z, the Q50 obviously could use those components, particularly because the package assumed that you already had intakes installed. Now, the current offering from Z1 Motorsports really is sort of a specific target to G37 and 370Zs because it includes the long tube intakes, which aren't really compatible with the Q50 without some modification. And it includes a Y pipe and single exit exhaust, which isn't going to cross over from the G or the Z to the Q50. It's a different style. That's okay though, because I got some good news. We'll go over the G and the Z and how this package works for those particular platforms, and we'll move to the Q50 and see what sort of we can piece together here. So as I've said for a long time, the G37 and the older 370Zs respond a lot better to cold air intakes than the Q50 does. So you can actually get a nice chunk, a substantial gain from cold air intakes being installed on the G and the Z. And they are of the long tube design, so it's going to get those filters out toward the front of the car, really pulling that cool air in from outside rather than sucking in hot engine bay heat. With this platform, we know the bottleneck is the factory catalytic converters, and of course that's true for really any other platform. If you're bringing in a bunch of air and you can't get it out, it doesn't really do you any good. So you're bringing in all that fresh air with those larger intakes and the ported upper intake manifold, you need to be able to get it out. This Z1 Motorsports 400 horsepower package accomplishes that via the shorty headers and I believe they're resonated test pipes, as well as a single exit exhaust. We know the single exit exhaust 3-inch generally allows you to make more horsepower and keeps that torque number up there as well. So it's a really good system, and it's going to sound pretty gnarly too. With the resonated test pipes. Now, the resonated test pipes, just a general observation here, is that the resonated test pipes don't help with rasp at all. They may help bring the level of drone or narrow the window, the RPM window of where drone occurs. So just keep that in mind. It's going to be a pretty aggressive sounding thing, but everybody wants that anyways. I hear that all the time. I get that question all the time. How do I make this thing scream? How do I make this the loudest, most aggressive sounding exhaust that I possibly can? This is a great way to accomplish it. Shorty headers, test pipes, and a single exit. It's going to sound wicked, but it's going to exhale. It's going to exhale very, very efficiently. So you're bringing all that air in and you're moving it directly out the rear end of the car. So free flowing air in and out, that's going to help you maximize the performance of this platform and make you the most power possible staying naturally aspirated with basic bolt-ons. Of course, you can get more naturally aspirated power if you open the engine up and we're doing cams and stroker kits and things like that. But if you're just looking for a bolt-on kit that you can probably install all of these components in your garage with some hand tools to get you that 400 crank horsepower number, and honestly probably even a little bit more, this is a kit for you. It's not cheap by any means, but if you look at the prices on the website, or you try to source these components elsewhere from other manufacturers or vendors, you're going to have something that's piecemealed, and you're going to spend a lot more money. I mean, if you think about headers for this car itself, quality headers for the VQ37 are not cheap. This Z1 single exit exhaust, I think, is over $1,000 by itself. Then you're talking these long tube test pipes and a ported upper intake manifold. You know, these are pretty expensive pieces that are packaged nicely together at a nice discount. And they're definitely going to get you there, because they're going to get you that 400 crank horsepower number. There's no doubt about that, and you probably get a little bit more. And that's one thing I'd like to mention as well too. Since the first video that I made, there has been progress made in tuning this particular platform. People are reaching some really nice numbers with, if you think about it, with just headers and intakes and exhaust. So if we're talking putting all of these pieces to the puzzle together, I think they can squeak a little bit more power out. We might be talking into the 350, 360 horsepower to the wheels number, which is well over that 400 crank horsepower if you do the math. So, you know, I think they're probably being conservative when they say 400 horsepower. And it also sounds better than saying 410 or 405. But I think we're going to get over that 400 horsepower, that 400 crank horsepower number, to be honest. So I did mention, or I did reference the Q50 when talking about this 400 horsepower package. So let's get in close here. Let's get in close here when talking about the Q50. So as I mentioned before, and as you guys probably know by this point, the G37 and the 370Z, the older Z in particular, respond better to cold air intakes in the Q50. So you're not going to be able to take those long tube intakes and bolt them up to the Q50. It's not going to work. And you're not going to be able to use the catback exhaust system, the single exit exhaust that's included in this package, on the Q50. It's not going to work, different design. But here's the good news, have no fear. The Q50 doesn't necessarily need cold air intakes to perform or to boost the horsepower numbers with that car. It just doesn't respond as well, or cold air intakes just don't have as big of an impact on the Q. So you can use the Takeda intakes, or what a lot of people do, and what I did myself, is get the Z1 Motorsports silicone intake tubes and just pair them with a good high flowing dry drop-in filter like AFE, for example. That's going to give you more than enough intake air to get some of the numbers that you're looking for. You could pair that then with the ported intake manifold and these test pipes and the shorty headers and a custom catback exhaust like the Speed Culture Studios catback. Check out that video if you're interested, or any decent aftermarket catback exhaust. Check out Z1 Motorsports. I'm sure they got some available for you, and you're going to still be able to achieve these numbers. And you're going to be able to achieve these numbers with investing a little bit less money, actually. So it's a win-win. Here's something to keep in mind too, guys, and this should go without saying, but there's a lot of people that just don't understand this or think about this necessarily, and that is that the car is going to need to be tuned after installing this complete package, right? Even installing these cold air intakes or test pipes, the car's going to need to be tuned to run properly. But now you're throwing in a ported intake manifold and a single exit exhaust. You're never going to benefit from these components if the car's not tuned properly to run with them. So very high likelihood that you get a check engine light without a tune. It's likely that the car might run a little bit funny. You may feel a reduction in power without a tune. So keep that in mind. You're spending $3,000+ on this kit, but then you're also going to need to buy the Ecutech software package and have the dyno time, or a remote tune from a reputable tuner that's able to do tunes remotely. If you're in the South Carolina, North Carolina, Georgia vicinity, Z1 Motorsports, highly recommended. Their tuning capabilities are top-notch, of course, and of course you're tuning the car with their components on it, so it just kind of makes sense. So my thoughts about the package, you're getting a lot of high-quality components here that you can put on your G37, and these are older cars now at this point, so the idea that you can put these quality components together on this platform still and make 400 crank horsepower, make well over 340 horsepower, and probably around 275, 280 foot-pounds of torque, and maybe even more. Now, it's nothing to sneeze at. It's going to be a lot of fun, and it's going to sound fantastic. It might seem like a little bit of an investment up front, but again, if you try to piecemeal this together, it's going to cost you more in the end. And the good news is, too, when you're thinking about the Q50 and how all of these items can be used for the Q50, you don't need all of them. You're not going to be able to use all of them, but you can get some of the key components, install them on the Q50, like the test pipes, the headers, and potentially the ported intake manifold, and then pair it with a good quality catback system and just an upgraded drop-in filter for your factory air boxes, and you're going to make those 340, 350 horsepower to the wheel. And that's a damn nice number on a really good looking, naturally aspirated four-door sedan. And there's a potential really with the Q50 that you can get up over that 350, 355 number, and maybe tickle 360 to the wheel. People bag on the VQ37 all the time, saying sounds like a trumpet, or it's all show no go, or it's, all bark and no bite. Whatever, guys. Think about that. A car making 300 horsepower, 300 plus horsepower to the wheels, with minimal modifications, is faster than 90% of the cars you're going to see on the road on your daily commute. Now you're talking adding just a few basic bolt-ons essentially, and now you're talking 340, 350 horsepower to the wheels. That's nothing to joke about. That's nothing to sneeze at. That's a pretty stout little car. So check out the link in the description below, guys. It's to the complete 400 horsepower package from Z1 Motorsports for the VQ37, particularly the G37 and the 370Z. It's a little bit different than the 400 horsepower package that they offered just 3, 4, 5 years ago. So maybe you looked at it back then and you weren't into it. Check it out now. They got some different things. The intakes, the long tube intakes, the single exit exhaust, a couple of new components in there that might pique your interest. And again, this is particularly for the G37 and the 370Z. But you can take a look at some of the parts that they offer and then pick and choose what you might want to apply to the Q50, aside from the exhaust and the intakes, of course. Let me know if you have any questions down in the comments below. I'll get to every single one of them as fast as I possibly can. And of course, Z1 Motorsports is going to provide really good customer service if you have any questions for them as well. Call them, check out the website, send them a message. They're going to help you out and find the right package for you. So thank you guys very much for watching this one. I appreciate the continued support up to this point. A lot of stuff coming for this channel, a lot of things in the works right now. So I hope you guys will follow along. I appreciate it. See you in the next one.